Hello internet friends, and welcome back to what I guess is officially a series on this channel now because we have 2 episodes. In the first episode, we compared vintage to modern clothing to see just how bad quality has gotten. It was a fascinating deep dive that you guys seem to enjoy. This week though, I want to focus on the relationship between makers, mills, and craftsmanship. Vintage is just forever fascinating to me. If you've been around here long enough, you know that that's how I got my start. I have sold vintage online for over a decade. All of these pieces were thrifted over the last couple months. So I hope that's a testament to how easy it is to come across these fascinating time capsules of history. I also want to note this book is very much inspired by The Golden Thread, which is written by Cassia St. Clair. I just recently got done listening to the audiobook, and first and foremost, I felt like I was literally on Spaceship Earth the entire time I was listening to it. She just wraps you up in the fabric that shaped human history, and it is so fascinating, such an enjoyable ride. I feel like this episode is kind of my ode and thank you for such an amazing book. Without further ado, let's dive into these 5 pieces and see what kind of story they can tell for us. Did I potentially structure this entire video around this specific find? Maybe. A 1970s Gucci 100% twill silk scarf. The design on this was possibly drawn by Vittorio Ocnero. Unfortunately, there is no signature on it. He did typically sign his prints. The hems alone represent a slow and methodical way of crafting an heirloom item, hand rolled and stitched into place, which is a really good indicator on if you have found a vintage silk scarf at the thrift store. The screen printing process of the time was hand layered color by color using stencils for each section of the design. And just considering how intricate the artwork was, you can imagine how long the process could potentially take. Gucci was founded in 1921 by Guccio Gucci in Florence, Italy. Guccio, inspired by the luggage he saw while working at London's Savoy Hotel, opened a small leather goods store focused on high quality goods and craftsmanship. By the 1960s and 70s, the brand was known internationally and was the definition of luxury and bold prints of the time. In 1966, Gucci introduced its legendary Flora scarf, designed by our potential illustrator, Vittorio Ocnero. And the story gets really good because Grace of Monaco was involved in it, which, you know, Grace of Monaco, also known as Grace Kelly. While out shopping in a Gucci store, Princess Grace of Monaco purchased some items, and as a token of appreciation, Guccio sent over the scarf as a gift. She later wore it and helped solidify the print as a globally recognized pattern. Now you can find it in artwork, but most notably the Flora fragrance bottle, which most people, if you like fragrance, you know about that. My personal favorite part about this scarf though is the fact that Gucci is heavily focusing on the history of their scarves right now. I mean, we're talking within the last month. They started their 90 by 90 project, which focuses on reimagining the overall look of the scarves and giving it a modern day touch. To me though, this scarf represents not just fashion, but it also represents artwork. It's an heirloom piece. It's something that, even though yes, I did find it at a thrift store, it's meant to be passed down from generation to generation. The really frustrating part about this scarf is it actually has tape marks on it. There is a bunch of tape residue that I have been painstakingly trying to get out, and it's just not working. The reason this has tape marks on it though is because somebody framed it. They had this in their home as a literal piece of artwork, and I think that's probably what I am personally gonna do with it, is turn it into an art piece in my room. I just think that's a really important aspect of clothing and clothing ownership, is the overall picture of why you're purchasing something and why you're bringing it into your home. You know, I'm all about thinking methodically when it comes to purchases, and an item like this, I feel like just has so much possibility and so much potential. You know, it would have a lot more potential if I can get these gosh darn sticker marks out of it. But overall though, this is such a cool find and such a testament to the relationship between artists and who is actually designing the pieces, the artwork that goes into it, and the painstaking craftsmanship of actually getting the garment to come to life. Whether it's someone hand rolling the edges and stitching it into place, or someone laying out the fabric dye and in individually coloring each aspect of the fabric. It just really tells you an intricate story on how something like this is made. You know, this research literally makes me feel like a detective. Speaking of detective, I would like to thank the sponsor of today's video, June's Journey. June's Journey is a vintage-inspired mobile game where the goal is to find hidden objects, and it's like a built-in mystery, and you have this whole detective story going on, but it's set in the glamorous 1920s. I kind of wish I had thrifted some 1920s pieces. With each new scene though, you get to kind of see the mystery unfold, and you keep having to find these like little objects all throughout the game. The main protagonist is June Parker, and the whole goal is to solve the mystery of who murdered her sister and uncover all the family secrets. And at the same time, you also get to like decorate and design your own island, which has a beautiful little cottage on the island. You have in-game rewards, as well as you can join a club so you can play with your friends and family. And not only do you get to solve all the crimes and mysteries, but it also explores a deeper narrative of family relationships, motherhood, love, betrayal. And the story is constantly evolving with new chapters launching every week. You can download June's Journey for free by clicking the link down below. June's Journey is available on iOS and Android mobile devices, as well as on PC. Next, our story brings us to this Spiewak & Sons MA1 bomber jacket. Most likely from the late 70s, early 80s. I'm gonna go with late 70s. I'm a little nervous to put this one in here because the history is so all over the place when it comes to dating bomber jackets. This specific one though is a civilian reproduction, so yeah, a little bit harder to date. Those jackets were used anywhere from the 1950s to the 1970s, and they're made of nylon and polyester. Two of my least favorite fabric types, but they were a necessity of the time, and I want to dive into that a little bit and as much as I can. Of course, this is always a nuanced approach. Originally, pilots wore leather, but when jets entered the scene, leather was too bulky and difficult to move around in. Plus, with higher altitudes, you have the risk of perspiration literally freezing. So came nylon. Lightweight, water resistant, and it was the miracle fiber of its time. Nylon was invented in 1935 by DuPont. Initially for stockings, but World War II changed that overnight. Suddenly it was for parachutes, tents, ropes, and flight jackets. The MA-1 had a reversible bright orange lining for rescue visibility. Let's not deny the fact that although it was made for functionality, it really does have a cool aesthetic to it. You cannot deny that. And I truly understand from a consumer aspect, DuPont had a perfect storm. I mean, these people look so cool in these outfits. Like, that is an ultimate selling point. People just wanted to look like they're heroes. And let's be real, who doesn't want something that's going to withstand the elements in a jet plane? It just makes total sense how they had the best selling points possible. Nylon was absolutely destined to be part of everybody's wardrobe. But despite its advantages, nylon is flammable, and as cockpit technology advanced, the risk associated with flammable materials became a significant concern, leading to developments of jackets made from fire-resistant materials. Also has a lot of noteworthy complications with the fabric. But by the late 70s and early 80s, these jackets became a post-war icon. Punks, rebels, hip-hop, you name it, they all adopted the look, and the fashion statement 100% became mainstream. And although nylon was revolutionary for the time, unfortunately, I just do not have the time to unpack the entirety of the mess here. I will leave some links down below if you are at all interested in researching, just the horrors of DuPont. I think sometimes people might get a little confused when they hear nylon versus polyester and not realize that they are essentially one and the same. The chemical compound isn't the same, but they both shed microplastics and they both are detrimental to the environment that we live in. Nylon, just like polyester, can be coated in chemicals that can help with flame resistance and waterproofing. But as we are learning more and more, those chemicals come with a cost and a price. And especially because of the shedding of microplastics, knowing all of this and looking towards the future with fashion, it just makes me wonder what our relationship is going to be, especially with all of this research coming out. Just the relationship that we have to these fabrics between military and sports and just everyday casual wear. It just really shows you how much all of these pieces are embedded in our everyday everyday lives. I'm not speaking from some high horse. I mean, literally my bra that I have on right now has nylon in it. I do think though that jacket paints a fascinating picture into how quickly and easily we can be influenced by just about anything, whether it's our heroes or just somebody on TikTok telling us what to wear. I'm sure in some boardroom somewhere, they were like, you know what? We didn't really make these for civilians, but they sure do want to buy them, so why not mass produce them? I think this one's really important because I've used this for so many years as a way to date clothing. This tag is from Jean Michel. I would date this probably late 70s. It's a rayon metallic blend dress, but the tag reads, made in the British colony of Hong Kong. It's a really easy way to distinguish on whether or not an item is made pre-1990s. And the reasoning behind that is because Hong Kong is no longer under British colonial rule. After World War II, Hong Kong, still under British colonial rule, became a powerhouse of garment manufacturing. Western brands flooded in, chasing low labor costs and export access. Hong Kong offered both skilled workers, cheap production, and British-built trade infrastructure. This was the start of something huge, offshore fashion manufacturing. It laid the groundwork for what would become fast fashion. Labor was invisible, profit was prioritized. Western consumers got cheap, trendy clothes, but garment workers, mostly women, got long hours, low pay, and no credit. Many of the brands never even made the clothes themselves, they just branded them. Basically what today is known as white labeling. This dress is essentially the prequel to everything that we're wrestling with now in ethical fashion conversations. Now, just to be clear, this doesn't mean that this dress was of poorer quality. The craftsmanship and design detail was really, really good in British Hong Kong. The standards were top tier. The interesting thing though, with exports opening up and trade going globally, China opened up to foreign investors and most of the manufacturers in Hong Kong moved to mainland China. So now you have Hong Kong's role shifting from maker to manager. But the craftsmanship still continued. Just because you have made in on the label, no matter where it's from, it could potentially be really good clothing. It just comes down to how it's manufactured, what the standards are, and what type of fabric they're using. Those are the three components that you really need to look at and pay attention to. But I think what this dress represents, to me at least, is the idea of globalization opening up and trade starting to happen in a way that feels like we lost control over the ownership of the dress. Who's making the dress, and are they being paid fairly? Humans have a deep-rooted history when it comes to exploitation and labor, and I think this dress has a really important story to tell when it comes to manufacturing globally. Next, our adventure moves us along to this stunning wrap skirt by Emily Weatherbe. The best part about this, it has the mill stamped on the selvage, Lonsdale Mills. Now, both Emily Weatherbe and Lonsdale Mills had very small internet presence, so this was a rough go for me trying to research this. Miss Emily Weatherbe has an article written about her and how she was trying to illegally import certain garments. It's Miss Weatherbe, you scandalous little lady. So this era was a turning point in textile design. Thanks to advances in synthetic dyes and screen printing, prints got bolder, colors got louder. Suddenly, clothing was a canvas for psychedelic expression. Artists and textile designers leaned heavily into the 1970s day-glow prints. Okay, the part that fascinates me the most though is the fabric stamp. Lonsdale Mills got credit for this skirt. That used to be the norm. Fabric mills weren't just footnotes. They were often a huge part of the buying decision when it came to the garment. Mills used to be such a focal point of the fabric production. Today, most consumers don't even think twice about where the fabric came from. Fast fashion has trained us to value silhouette and price over fiber and source. But in the past, the textile itself was the prestige. What was it made of? A good mill actually could be considered just as important as the designer itself. I can't help but mention Ballantine, which was mentioned in my last deep dive video, and how much of a relationship that millinery had with fabric designers, and it was almost like the stamp of approval. Queen Elizabeth herself put her stamp of approval on that brand. But don't get me wrong, fabric mills are very much still a thing. They have not disappeared. In fact, today, the global textile mills market is a colossal industry, with revenues reaching $672.4 billion in 2021. The industry does face a lot of challenges though, including high energy costs, inflation, and shifting consumer demands. High-end fashion houses continue to prioritize quality by partnering with esteemed textile mills. Loro Piana, renowned for its exceptional cashmere and wool, is supplying brands like Hermes and Zegna. And Prada is investing in Italian production facilities to maintain artisanal craftsmanship and control over the supply chain. But to tie this all back to Lonsdale, I stumbled upon this article that actually quoted one of the designers within the mill, Lonsdale, which unfortunately has now since obviously been closed. This article, written in 1971 for the New York Times, talks about how the demand for cotton print cloths has created a shortage in the market, it was learned. This came about as a result of lowered output by mills that had lost money in woven goods last year and had switched looms from cottons to polyester blends. I could sell thousands of yards more than are available to me, he said, pointing out that mills are unable to deliver the basic cloth in the quantities needed. You can kind of start to see just how much polyester started to seep into just everyday life, and it makes sense. There's a shortage in cotton, so of course polyester is going to be pushed. Okay, this last piece. Oh boy, we've been taken for a ride. This is a 1970s polyester suit set, to be determined on if I can actually button these up. Like in my early 20s, this was like my favorite uniform. I used to rock polyester bell bottoms like nobody's business. But you know, I'm a little bit older and a little bit wiser now, and I actually do have hips, so I don't know if I can get these on. What makes this so fascinating? This does not have a tag on it. I don't think there was ever a tag on it. That's my own personal theory. I could be totally mistaken, but it does have a very important part. A union label. It really was not uncommon in the 1970s for department stores and certain brands to start carrying pieces that just didn't even have labels in it. In the 1960s and 70s, ready-to-wear exploded. It was everywhere. Less and less people were caring about what the brand was, how it was made. They just wanted the structure, they wanted the silhouette, they wanted the style. That was what they were being sold on. The International Ladies Garment Workers Union, or ILGWU, was formed in 1900 and was powerful throughout the 20th century. This wasn't just any organization. It represented tens of thousands of garment workers, mostly women, advocating fiercely for fair wages. They regulated working hours and fought for safe working conditions in an industry historically rife with exploitation. They were fighting for fair pay and ethical working conditions. It was not by any means perfect, and there was still exploitation going on. I'm not trying to paint a pretty picture of this, but that label does represent something. But as we learned earlier, in the late 20th century, fashion production went offshore. This led to factories in the US and Europe shuttering their doors. Union memberships plummeted, the ILGWU and similar organizations began to lose their influence, unable to compete against the tide of cheaper, quicker, overseas-made clothing. The rich legacy of local craftsmanship began to vanish, replaced by anonymous mass-produced garments. And the little union-made garment tags pretty much disappeared overnight. Okay, so just to wrap all this up, why did I choose these 5 garments? Well, first and foremost, because they were all readily available at the thrift store. That was the biggest part. But I feel like each piece tells such a different story, all within such a short time period, all within only a couple decades time. And I feel like you could almost see the breadcrumbs of us sort of removing the storyline of clothing and how it's manufactured, why it's made, mass market production versus something that is so methodical and has a story behind it, versus the very last piece, which is just literally a representation of workers' rights and how much they just quickly disappeared. But I also think the story behind the garments is what's so important. I constantly, this is a reoccurring theme on my channel, is like how obsessed with story I am. You know, I used to sell watches for a living. Everybody always asks me where this ring is from, and I used to sell watches, and I had watch links laying around all the time, and I made this ring. But the art of selling watches, I think, taught me so much and was a huge stepping stone in my like love and adoration of vintage clothing. And I think it's because I watched people, no pun intended, become obsessed with watches and the stories that they told. You know, you didn't buy an expensive timepiece unless you had a story behind why you were buying it. Oftentimes it was the relationship between what the item was actually manufactured for, like what the reason was behind it. And that's what draws me to vintage clothing so much, is the story. And anything that I purchase today, I am constantly looking for a story. Why does this manufacturer make the clothing that they do? What's the story behind it? What's the purpose? Trust me, I live for these moments of just being able to learn what goes into each garment. Obviously, it's a lot of fun for me. So I hope you enjoyed it. You know, I'm still trying to figure out like the logistics of how all of this will come together and how many episodes I can possibly do. I hope you enjoyed it just as much as I did researching it. And as always, thank you so much for watching. If you're new around here, I might have a couple extra videos for you right here and right here, and I will see you in the next one. Bye.